I was halfway through helping a stranger home when my past opened a door and stepped into the present. The girl was unsteady, her laughter a little too loud for the empty street. She leaned on me, her floral perfume mixing with the cool night air. I was just trying to be a decent person, to make sure she got inside safe. I didn't know that the house she pointed to was the last place on earth I should have been. I knocked on the door. It swung open, and standing there, backlit by the living room glow, was the one person I had spent the last 2 years trying to forget. She was wearing a worn-out band t-shirt and jeans, looking like she hadn't been expecting anyone. Her eyes found mine, and a slow, deliberate smile spread across her face. She wasn't surprised. She looked like she had been waiting for me. She glanced at the drunk girl I was holding up, then back at me. "Well, isn't this cozy?" she said, her voice dripping with amusement. "Looks like we've got some catching up to do." But I need to rewind the tape. That scene on the porch was the climax of a movie I didn't know I was starring in. The real story started long before that night, in a place that was quiet, dusty, and predictable. My sanctuary, my shop. A workshop tucked away at the end of a gravel lane, shadowed by old pecan trees. I rebuild old wooden furniture. It's a simple life, but it's mine. My name is Ethan. I'm 38. I live in a small town north of Atlanta, in a house I bought after my last relationship collapsed. I spent a year gutting the place, replacing the drywall, refinishing the original pine floors. The physical labor was a kind of therapy. I live alone, no pets, no plants, just me, my tools, and the smell of sawdust. For 3 years, I was with Lila. We lived in that house together. I thought we were building something, but I was just building walls while she was busy building a life that didn't include me. She was explosive, vibrant, a force of nature that I could never quite contain. She needed the world to see her. I needed the world to leave me alone. We didn't hate each other. We just wore each other out, like 2 gears grinding against each other with no oil. When it was over, she took the car, the newer furniture, and the friends. I kept the house and the silence. I convinced myself that the silence was peace. My routine is my anchor. I wake up before the sun, make instant coffee, and walk to my workshop. I spend my days fixing broken things for other people. I eat the same burger at the same diner for lunch. I listen to the same old radio station. I don't miss Lila, not anymore. I don't really feel much of anything. I just exist, moving from one task to the next, waiting for the day to be over so I can do it all over again. I told myself I was content, but content is just a fancy word for stalled. That's where Amelia came in. She was 29, a freelance copy editor. I first noticed her at that diner. She sat in the booth opposite mine every day, buried in a stack of paper, a red pen tucked behind her ear. She always ordered the same thing, black coffee and a toast. We started with a nod, then a morning. Then, one rainy Tuesday, she slid into my booth uninvited. She had a question about a book I was reading. We talked for an hour. It was easy. It was comfortable. It felt like a puzzle piece clicking into place I didn't even know was loose. It was nothing more than that. At least, that's what I told myself. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just enjoying the company. There was one other detail. In the corner of my workshop, taking up space by the window, was a beautiful walnut desk. A client had commissioned it months ago, paid a deposit, and then vanished. No call, no explanation. So the desk just sat there. I kept working on it, sanding the surface, sealing the grain, polishing the brass handles. I couldn't stop. It felt wrong to leave it unfinished. I was waiting for someone to come and claim it. He treated that chair like it mattered, like it deserved to be finished, even if no one asked for it. Amelia saw it one afternoon. She leaned against the doorframe and said, "Who builds something that beautiful and just walks away?" I told her the client had disappeared. She shook her head slowly. Some people have no idea what they're leaving behind. I thought she was talking about the wood. I was wrong. The evening that changed everything, Amelia texted me. She said she'd gotten some good news and wanted to celebrate. She suggested a little wine bar downtown. I said yes, surprising myself. It was the first spontaneous thing I had done in years. What I didn't know was that Amelia had a new roommate, an old college friend she had reconnected with. And what I couldn't have possibly anticipated, the twist that was waiting for me, was who that friend was. The bar was perfect. Exposed brick, jazz music, fairy lights strung across the ceiling. Amelia was already there, flushed with excitement. She had a glass of red wine in front of her. She smiled when she saw me, a different kind of smile. It was unguarded, full of anticipation, like she had made a decision without telling me. We talked. She talked, mostly. I listened. She told me about her work, about a manuscript she was editing about a woman who falls in love with her next-door neighbor from a distance. The woman in the story never says a word. She just finds ways to be near him. Borrowing sugar, asking for help with a leaky faucet, walking her dog at the same time he gets the mail. The author writes it so well, Amelia said, tapping her glass. But I don't think anyone really has that kind of patience, to wait years to say something simple. Her eyes were fixed on me. There was a heaviness in the air. As the night wore on, Amelia drank more than I had ever seen her drink. She got loud, funnier, more animated. She told stories about college, about her family, about the time she spent a summer in Greece. She was magnetic. And at one point, while laughing at a story, she reached over and put her hand on my wrist. It was a brief touch, casual, but it burned. I felt the echo of it long after she pulled away. She was drunk. I called a rideshare, but she gave the wrong address twice. Finally, I gave up. I said I'd drive her home. We pulled up to a beautiful old Victorian house I had never seen before. It had a wraparound porch and a garden overgrown with roses. I helped Amelia out of the car. She was giggling, unsteady on her feet. I steadied her on the steps and knocked on the heavy oak door. There was a pause. Then the porch light came on. The door opened. Lila stood there. She was wearing a silk robe, her hair loose, arms crossed. She wasn't surprised. She was smiling. It was the smile she used to wear when she knew she was going to win an argument. "Well, well," she said, her voice purring. "Ethan Cole, delivering my roommate home like a knight in shining armor." The word hit me like a physical blow. Roommate. Amelia was Lila's roommate. The woman who sat across from me at the diner, who asked about the walnut desk, who had just held my wrist. She was living with my ex-girlfriend. And she had never, not once, mentioned it. Amelia mumbled something, her head on my shoulder. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know how to tell you." Her eyes were wide, panicked. I didn't understand what she was apologizing for. Not yet. Lila took Amelia's arm, guiding her inside. Then she turned back to me, still leaning against the doorframe, the light framing her silhouette. "Now," she said softly, "it's just you and me." Her voice was sweet. Too sweet. It was a trap, and I knew it. "Good night, Lila," I said. And I walked away. For 2 weeks, Amelia disappeared. She stopped coming to the diner. She didn't text. The booth across from me sat empty. I told myself it didn't matter. We were just two people who shared a table. But I kept going to the workshop, kept sanding that walnut desk, even though it was already as smooth as glass. My hands were working, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about her, the way she leaned in the doorway, the touch on my wrist, the panic in her eyes. I was thinking about the look on Lila's face when she said, "Just you and me." After 2 weeks, I found Amelia. She was standing outside my workshop holding a manuscript. She didn't come inside. "I want you to read this," she said. "One chapter. Tell me if it feels real." I took it. She nodded once and walked away. I sat down at the unfinished desk and read. The chapter described my workshop, the pecan trees outside, the dusty floor, the smell of linseed oil. The main character was a furniture maker, a man who works alone, who says little. There was a chair in the story, an abandoned desk, that the man kept restoring even though no one was coming for it. The details were so precise I felt cold. It was my life on paper. I told myself the author must live nearby, must have walked past my shop. The difference between obsession and devotion is whether the person is trying to own you or trying to know you. The next day, I met Amelia at the diner. I slid the manuscript back to her. "It feels real," I said. "Very real." She looked at me, and for the first time, both her eyes and her lips were smiling. After that, things shifted. Amelia started coming to the workshop regularly. She'd bring a new chapter and read it to me aloud while I worked. The shop filled with two sounds, the whisper of sandpaper on wood and her voice. The story in the manuscript built higher and higher. The woman drew closer to confessing her feelings. But Amelia said nothing about it in real life. She just sat a little closer each time, stayed a little longer. One afternoon, she touched the surface of the walnut desk. "This is so smooth," she said. "That's because I sanded it," I said. "Every day." She went quiet. I asked her who wrote the novel. She closed the manuscript on her lap and smiled. "Someone who writes very slowly," she said. Then I heard a sound, the click of heels on the alley. I looked up, and there was Lila, standing in the doorway, wearing an expensive work outfit. She hadn't been here since we were together. She looked around the workshop slowly, at the tools, at the dust, at the walnut desk. "Still the same old habits," she said. "Fixing things nobody needs." She ran a finger along the edge of my workbench. "I need to talk to you." She said she knew Amelia had been coming here. She said she wasn't jealous, but she thought I deserved to know something important. "Amelia has issues," Lila said, studying my face. "She's not what you think she is. She's not an editor. She's the author. She wrote the entire book before she ever set foot in Georgia, before she ever met you. She saw a picture of you in a local paper. She moved across the state. She rented a room from me, all because of a photograph. She used me as a stepping stone." Lila wasn't lying. I knew that. Every fact she presented was true. But she was arranging the truth like a weapon. She was editing the story, cutting the tenderness, amplifying the weirdness. I stood in my workshop and looked at the walnut desk. Amelia had sat near it for weeks. She had read to me about a woman doing exactly what Lila was accusing her of. I didn't know if her presence here was genuine, or if she was just playing out a scene from her own book. That evening, Amelia came by. She was carrying the manuscript. The moment she stepped inside, she knew something was wrong. "Whose book is it?" I asked. She set the manuscript down. "Mine." "Did you know Lila was my ex before you moved in with her?" "Yes," she said. I felt the floor shift. Every detail I thought was coincidence now looked like orchestration. I asked her one question. "How much of the book is true?" She looked at me steadily. "The parts I wanted you to read," she said. "I'm not going to explain myself. You won't believe me right now." She stood up. "But this," she said, touching the desk. "I didn't sit here because of the book. I sat here because it's the only place I've ever felt like I could rest." She walked out, leaving the manuscript on the bench. For a week, she didn't come. I couldn't work. I just sat there, touching the wood she touched. On the fourth evening, I opened the manuscript. I didn't skim. I read every word. The woman in the story wasn't obsessed. She was lonely. The kind of lonely that comes from being invisible. She finds a man who fixes broken things and thinks, if he can take something cracked and splintered and make it whole, maybe he can do the same for me. And then she realizes she doesn't need to be fixed. She just needs a place to be still. A chair by a window. Someone nearby who doesn't mind the quiet. I closed the book. This wasn't a script. It was a confession written in the third person. The next morning, I drove to Lila's house. She answered the door, sipping coffee, looking smug. "Here to apologize?" she said. "No," I said. "I need to see Amelia." Lila smiled. "She's gone. Moved out yesterday. You broke her." She had nothing left to say. She stepped aside. "But you're here now. It's just you and me. Come in." I looked at Lila. I understood her clearly now. She didn't want me back. She just wanted the seat next to her to stay empty. I turned and walked away. I called the publishing house. A woman told me Amelia had rented a studio on the lake, about an hour away. She gave me the address. I drove out there with the windows down, the smell of pine and water flooding the car. The sky was the kind of deep blue you only see in the South. The studio was a small, shabby cabin. Amelia opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes were red. She didn't say a word. I said the only thing I had come to say. I finished reading it. The ending isn't written yet. I think the author should let the man write that part himself. She looked at me for a long time. Then she stepped aside and let me in. I didn't kiss her that day. We started over. No disguises, no manuscript. Just two people on a dock at sunset, eating takeout, watching the water. She told me everything. She had seen my picture in a magazine. She wrote the novel that same week. Then she moved to my town, got the editing job, and rented Lila's room. She knew who Lila was. She did it anyway. And listening to her, I wasn't angry. I realized the difference between obsession and devotion. Lila wanted to own me. Amelia wanted to know me. 3 months later, Amelia moved back. She rented a small place near my workshop. She came to the shop every afternoon and sat in the chair by the desk. The desk had a person now. I painted it a soft gray. She asked why gray. I said it matched the lake water where we had our first honest conversation. I had already measured her living room. I knew where it was going. One evening, Amelia fell asleep in that chair while I worked. I draped a jacket over her shoulders. When she woke up, she smiled. "This is the ending of the book," she said. "Don't write the ending," I said. "Leave it open." 1 year later, her novel was published. The dedication read, "For the man who sanded it every day." The ending of the book was simple. The woman walks into the workshop, sits down in the chair, and says, "I'm here." The man, without looking up, says, "I know." I didn't tell Amelia I loved her until our 15th month. We were on our porch, watching the sunset through the trees, and I said it quietly, like I was noting the weather. "I know," she said, quoting her own book. That night, I had just been trying to help a drunk stranger get home. I didn't know she had already written me into her life. I didn't know the door that opened was meant to let the future walk in. I heard Lila move to the city. I hope she finds what she's looking for. The walnut desk sits in Amelia's living room, where the light comes in perfect. I repainted it once more, matching her walls. It looks like it grew there. It is no longer the desk no one came back for. It found its home. So let me ask you this. If someone loved you before they met you, through a photograph, a story, would you call that love or obsession? Where is the line? And have you ever discovered that someone was hiding how they felt all along, by fixing your shelf, by simply sitting next to you in silence? If this story reminded you of someone, hit that like button and leave a comment. Subscribe to my channel for more stories where the ending isn't a kiss. It's a chair that finally found its home.